Hello there. What's going on, everyone? We are back at it with another episode of Mando Chat, and we're coming to you live this Monday night, and my guest is actually from the future, Mr. Harry Nick himself. Thank you for joining us today. Nick, how are you?
Thank you very much. Good to be here. Yeah, good. We were just chatting before this. For those of you who don't know, I actually work in retail, so over the past week during the big sales, I've been working my butt off. So a little bit tired, but glad to be here just chatting about Mando, just getting a chance to wind down a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hopefully this will be a nice kind of relaxing chat. We're live too, so there's and if you guys have any questions for myself or Nick, feel free to throw those in the live chat, and we will try to get to them as we can. I also want to throw out a big spoiler warning because we're going to be talking about Season 2, Episode 5, a.k.a. Chapter 13. So if you have not seen this recent episode of The Mandalorian, we're going to be talking all about it. Or if you don't care about spoilers, then be sure to hang around because we'll have some images and we'll be talking about a whole lot of stuff from this episode. Pretty much everything from the episode.
Yeah, it's very spoilery, this one. Just fair warning.
Very spoilery. Although if you've been watching everything, you have a pretty good idea what's going to be in here. But man, it was really good to watch. So that much is pretty cool. So we got a couple of folks in chat, and JJ says, is Crabbok bending space while teleporting there? I'm not a space bender. No, that's I think from Avatar: The Last Airbender. They never did space benders in there. But Nick, so for those of you guys who are not familiar with your channel or what you do, we do have a link down in the description below so people can check you out. But why don't you tell everybody kind of what it is you do and how long you've been doing it?
Been on YouTube for a couple of years now. I mainly talk about the tabletop game XWing, which of course you cover as well. I do like to do like more deep dive stuff, talk about like the game design. We whenever there's like points changes or new articles, like we go through all of that, discuss how that affects like meta play, casual play, that kind of stuff. Just really focusing on that more deep dive stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. You have a lot of depth and definitely a lot of insight, which is really nice. I found your videos actually kind of illuminating, especially because of a different perspective on certain factions that maybe I'm not as well steeped in. So it's nice to see that. Plus, like you said, the meta analysis. How did you take the news with Atomic Mass Games taking over all of the Star Wars minis, including X-Wing, which that was kind of a shake-up?
Yeah, like not gonna lie, it's kind of scary. Like there's no two ways about it, especially with Alex leaving. That really, really, really sucks.
Yes.
A big part of what I follow with X-Wing is the design, and I think he's been such a positive driving force for the game for so long. So look, we'll see what happens. I don't think we have a reason to be worried just yet. They seem to know what they're doing. I mean, fingers crossed at this stage. But yeah,
that's kind of all we can do right now, I think, is fingers crossed. And I'm with you. I'm kind of, I have a duality to me because I like change, especially with games that have been around for a long time. But at the same time, I don't want to have to rebuy everything. Like, I like the idea of. I like the concept of a second edition for X-Wing, but then when it's like, at the same time we had to rebuy and relearn, like, because it changed so much. So, like, while sometimes it's exciting, other times it can be terrifying, and I think that's what a lot of people are. I think that's where a lot of people are worried. But
that's right, and it could have been way worse than it was when FFG did it. I mean, at least we had those conversion kits. Some other brands, looking at Games Workshop, have not done that so cleanly in the past. So. I mean, we'll see. I'm really hoping we don't get a third edition. It's not the right time to do it in my mind. But having said all that, like, there are some positive changes that can come to the game. I think, like, we still have not seen a Razor Crest in the game after Mando has been out for a year. That's something that I've always been harping on about.
Yeah.
So maybe the release schedule will improve under Atomic Mass Games. Who knows? Who knows?
If you, one of the other games they do that I cover is Marvel Crisis Protocol, and their release schedule has been
big time.
Incredible. It reminds me of how X-Wing was in its first like wave or so. Like when it first started, they were coming out with like every month or two there was a new wave coming out for a little while. And maybe that's a little bit too extreme, but I think when you're a younger studio and you have less games that you have to produce and manufacture and develop and all of that, it's easier to really, triple down. And that's what they've definitely done with Marvel. So hopefully all of these new stuff will be able to kind of balance everything out, and we can get at least like maybe steady and consistent releases,
Yeah, I agree. Also, the way articles have been released, I've been very critical recently of FFG for not getting enough articles out about X-Wing. Even just weekly stuff talking about strategy and all this kind of stuff. We do see that with some other games, and I'm like, why is X-Wing this game where we only get news every so often, yet it's as big as it is? It just seems kind of weird. So a lot of little things that I think could be a positive change. I mean, we'll see, basically.
It really makes you wonder if maybe they knew this was happening a long time ago, and they've stopped putting forth quite so much effort. I mean, I and that's just pure speculation on my part. I don't know that that's true. I don't think that that's true. But I mean, I can tell you, if I was told that something I had worked on for 8 years or so was being taken away from me in 2 months, I would probably have a lot less hype to promote said product. But
yeah, you'd focus on the transition and not so much about all the new stuff. They did ram through these last through releases though, so that could be a potential thing. Like the halfway through Wave 7, Wave 8, and 9 were like all in within a few months. So
yeah, and we're supposed to, and there's still 3 more Aces packs out there that are supposed to, like that have already been leaked on their distributor site. So I'm curious if we're going to see articles for those. Especially since, I have a Wave 8 question for you. Have you gotten your hands on Wave 8 yet?
Not yet. We have it out here though. It's just not around to it yet. That's all. Yeah.
I got you. Oh, I got you. No, so one thing I've noticed at least lately with FFG, and we guys, if you've just joined into the channel, we are absolutely going to talk about the Mandalorian episode. But I noticed that there's been some delays in shipping for recent stuff over the last couple of weeks. This last wave, like I had it pre-ordered from Asmodee, and it didn't ship until I think yesterday or the day before, so it just shipped, so it's going to be a whole week late. And and that's strange. Like when you pre-order from Asmodee directly, you expect to at least make the street date, and they didn't even ship it until after the street date, so that was surprising to me. And then the same thing looks like it's going to happen with the next Armada release, and then the Twilight Imperium stuff. A lot of their product is shipping late, and I think it's just warehouse problems. It might be some kind of COVID related delays, but I was just curious if it was the same around, because I think in Australia, where you are, by the way, from the future, because it's actually Tuesday where you are right now, right? Where it's Monday night here.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm in Orlando, Florida, so I'm in the United States. It's Monday night still, so depending on people who are watching, they may be anywhere on the planet, and but yes, Mariano says we have Wave 8 minus the ETA 2 in Australia. You did an unboxing of the V-Wing. Nice. I will hopefully get some unboxings this week. I'm jealous to everybody that gets out content before me, because I want to be the first one, but you know what? First world problems can't always happen.
He's from Fly Casual, by the way, in case any of you are watching, so you can jump on their YouTube channel if you want to see that.
Awesome. Yeah. The ETA does not appear to be in Canada either. Now, I do believe that my pre-order box that is coming, I think it should, I'll probably have it by this weekend, does have all 4 ships. I always get 1 of each now. I can't buy as many. I used to buy 4 of each once upon a time, back when we only had 2 factions, and then maybe when we had 3. I'm like, I can't do that anymore. I don't know anybody who can play all 7 factions now and buy 4 of each of everything. It doesn't work that way. But with all of that said, we're going to jump into this episode. So consider this your spoiler breaking off point. If you haven't seen the episode, this is your time to say goodbye or come back later, and or just watch with us and just then go watch the episode and see if we got it right or not. But so this was chapter 13. See, it is 13. Yeah, there we go. I had a picture of it right here. Before this, we were talking about what chapter it was, and I wasn't sure. And Bleed Green Productions chimes in with a super chat, says, yo, 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 thank you, Bleed Green, for the support. We're glad to have you here. And this is chapter 13, The Jedi. There has been some speculation on whether or not this was going to be the episode that we finally got to see Ahsoka Tano make her live screen debut. And of course, when it says, when this episode's called The Jedi, you kind of know that, right? Yeah.
They didn't wait.
No.
It was like 5 seconds of the episode or something like that.
Yeah, no, the first thing we see is some trees, and we're like, okay, well, who are these guys running around with these rifles? They kind of, all masked, nameless, kind of almost like Star Wars version of red shirts. If you follow Star Trek, you might get the reference, but... And then before you know it, all of a sudden you see the white lightsabers, and I almost fell out of my chair. This was great. And
it was beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, especially in the dark too. Like, this was a dark episode, I feel like. And I'm glad they kept Ahsoka's lightsabers from Star Wars Rebels. So I live in Orlando, Florida, and we have a Disney World here. And they have Galaxy's Edge. And before COVID happened, I was actually able to go to Galaxy's Edge, and I bought the Ahsoka Tano lightsabers. And so actually, I should have brought them out for this video, but it would have been too big and noisy and stuff. But they're like, I'm not gonna lie, man. They got the sound effects right here, and like, because
yeah,
hers have a very distinct hiss of being like bzzz, like a lot more electric than. A lot less bass, a lot more treble, and it's just got this zap feel, and they really did it.
Yeah. Well, it's Star Wars, man. They got the sound right. It's such a crucial part of it.
No, absolutely.
Plus, they go on and off so many times as well, so you hear it a lot.
They do. She is like straight up like Jedi, like space ninja right here, right? And we got a new channel member. Wow, Jagot Tremblay. Hopefully I'm saying that right, or Yago. I'm guessing it's maybe Yago. But thanks for becoming a channel member, and thanks for the support. So Ahsoka chimes in here, and she's running around, like a thief in the night, cutting people down. And then we get our look at the magistrate here, and we don't know exactly who she is right away, but we know that she's a pretty nasty, pretty powerful person. And I guess her name is actually Morgan Elsbeth. Now, she's not somebody I think that we've seen before. I'm pretty sure she is a brand new character.
I may have checked the Wikipedia, and no, it doesn't look like she's appeared before.
Okay, good. Yeah, that was what I thought. But she's pretty interesting. I looked up a little bit, and there's rumors, and I'm not sure exactly how instantiated this is, but some people in chat are saying the same thing that I was about to say. Spartan 825 says apparently she's a survivor of Dathomir, and that's kind of mirrors up to some of the things that I have read today, which is very interesting, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit more as it goes on. But Dathomir, of course, is the home of the Night Sisters, as well as a lot of Night Brothers, aka like Darth Maul, was from Dathomir. So there's, and of course, it was also in Jedi Fallen Order, the video game. There was a planet that you could play on, and go through as well. But apparently, not necessarily everybody who was on Dathomir had to have been a Night Sister or a Night Brother. Like, there were apparently humans or humanoids on Dathomir as well. And if that ends up, again, we probably need a little bit, stronger confirmation of this, and maybe a little bit more expose from somebody like Pablo Hidalgo or Dave Filoni or Jon Favreau or somebody like that to come in and like talk about the backstory here. Or, honestly, for all we know, the next episode might kind of go into this too. But she's apparently got quite a lot more story behind her than we know about. So
you'd assume so, because we don't actually know what happens to her. Right. We'll talk about that later on, obviously. But
yeah, there's a lot of questions. She's got a little tattoo on her forehead. It might as well have been a question mark, because she kind of gives the series more questions than answers. But
yeah.
But we get Ahsoka kind of shows herself after cutting down all of these guys and wants answers, and she says we have this confrontation where they're both kind of puffing their chests out a little bit, and at this point, I'm clearly thinking, well, Ahsoka's, even though Ahsoka has the low ground, she's clearly the badass here. That's kind of how I looked at it. So this was pretty interesting, and of course, it kind of leaves the question: what does she want for this person? Because the person, the magistrate's like, you'll get no information from me, and she's like, I'm not going to give you that choice. Great dialogue options here too. I really liked.
Yeah,
I liked the writing for this, as well as the just this. as well as just kind of the cinematography of all the lightsabers and everything. I know a lot of people were kind of criticizing the Leiku or the mantrails, or however you want to call them, for Ahsoka. Her headdress, it looked a little different than the animation. Is that something you noticed?
Not so much. Do we know if they were CG or not? I was actually trying to work that out while I was watching it.
I don't believe they were CG.
No, because you can see crease lines in the front.
Yeah, and they've been very practical with just about as many of their effects as possible. Brandon in the chat says they were too small. So I would say, at least on my first time watching this, I didn't have any problem with them. But if you do compare to the animation, especially the grown-up Ahsoka in the animation, like her kind of head, her Leiku here are about as, or I guess Leiku is if you're a like Hera, so mantrails, but basically her head tails there are kind of about the teenage Ahsoka length. But that's only if you're comparing directly live action to animation.
You've really got to understand, like, they have to somehow marry up those old animations to the live action.
Yes.
And they've done that really, really well. That's something I really was impressed about with this episode. So, yeah, the proportions are going to be different, but the proportions are going to be different.
Yeah, exactly. Look at Count Dooku in the animation. He had this huge, long face, and that's not what Christopher Lee looked like, right?
Which was good for the animation. It felt like a Disney cartoon.
Yes.
Which worked for that character. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I did read some of the guys who worked on the special effects were talking about this too, and they said they kind of had to come to a compromise on what would still definitively look like Ahsoka versus they wanted her to actually be able to perform stunts in this makeup. And so had the mantrails been like almost down to her knees, like we've seen in some, in the Clone Wars, she has like a vision of herself in the future, and she's got these like Shakti had like them all the way down. And if they had made him that big, she wouldn't have been able to jump around and do all the flips and all the cool stunts we get to see. So,
there are a lot of Jedi like that. Remember the Colosseum scene in episode 2 where you see all the different Jedi, and like there's some with like giant necks and things like that. It's like, that can't be practical.
They just have to kind of stand there like holding the lightsaber like sideways and be like, and then their job is to fall down and die because they got overwhelmed, or they died they did all the flips just off screen.
That's it. Yep.
So like, and I think they could have done longer, maybe a little bit more animation accurate Ahsoka if they wanted to do more CGI. But I really appreciate the attention to practical effects in this show. A recent episode we had like the little furry ferret that was quite animatronic. And a lot of the creatures are definitely animatronic, and that's okay because that's. I think they're embracing what made Star Wars, and it was those practical effects.
It's made by people who love Star Wars, and that's actually, I just rewatched that yesterday. I couldn't help but notice. You can tell in some shots it's animatronic, and in some shots it's just a ferret with makeup on it. It's very well done. It's very, very well done. But you have to watch very closely.
And that's what they did with, I think, like some of the creatures that in the original trilogy that they were riding, and they were like horses with prosthetics on and things like that. I think the first dewback was just a hippo, or maybe not, probably not a hippo, but I think hippos are a little bit more violent, but yeah.
A little bit difficult for a film set, yeah.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. And so we kind of, we get the kind of epic kind of standoff, and Ahsoka gives them, you have 24 hours, and that's kind of the opening scene. So like we knew right away, like, oh, this is going to be, not really an episode of The Mandalorian. This is going to be an episode of The Jedi with the guest star of The Mandalorian. That's kind of, I think, how it turned out. So it cuts away to a Mando getting ready to land, and he's telling the child to sit back, and he still wants that little bauble on the gear shaft, or the same thing he had from first season. It's kind of like a little reminder of where he was, and he still wants this thing, which it's kind of cute. It's a reminder of what we saw last season, but it plays into something that we'll see a little bit later on. And we get a little force action where he kind of steals the toy to kind of play with it. And then Mando goes to finally lands on this planet so he can go to the city of Corvus. And I think it's interesting the way that like the landscape looks here, because you've got this world that looks like a dead world, like, or at least all of the land around the city. And we get like such a contrast between like the complete devastation that's ransacked this place versus the city as he's kind of flying over it with these very steep walls. Now I saw, I think Star Wars Explained, as another YouTube channel, was talking about this, and they drew a parallel that I'd like to echo, is that Dave Filoni directed this episode, and he also worked on Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I actually just recently watched that show for the first time. Like, I finished it like last month. And so there's a city in that show. Nick, I don't know if you've seen Avatar. But
I've watched a little bit of Korra. I haven't seen Avatar.
Okay. Well, I don't know if the same city. I haven't started Korra yet. But there's a place in Avatar called a city called Ba Sing Se. And it mirrors this almost directly. And it's this huge, like one of these last bastions of the Earth Kingdom. And it's all just complete wasteland outside of the city walls. And so it was an interesting parallel, since Dave Filoni is like the tie that binds them both together. And so he lands, and we get these awesome creatures off in the distance that like they really don't pay any attention
to. How
to.
cool did they look?
Oh, they were beautiful.
Just a Star Wars thing over there. Just
like
a bit of flavor.
I mean, these things were like AT-AT sized.
Yeah, yeah.
And honestly, they look kind of like dewback giraffes, maybe, or something like that. Like, yeah, that's the best thing I got for them. I don't know if these even exist anywhere else. Tree chompers, Lord Vader says in chat. That's a good name for them. I don't know if that's what they're called, but we can call them that for now, because they are certainly they're eating the trees. But they're beautiful, and I love that they were just in the background and weren't really like alluded to too much. But there was just a nice bit of world building right there.
That's right. It's just a little bit of flavor, but because it appeared in Star Wars, there's going to be a novel written about them tomorrow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, and so, again, great cinema, great shots here. Mando kind of makes his way into town.
Just gorgeous, the silhouette and everything.
Oh yeah, I loved it. And they kind of they let him into the city, and because they kind of ask him some questions if he's guild, and he's like, yeah, I'm just looking for place to kind of. He's playing his cards close to his chest here too. He says he's just looking for a layover. He doesn't ask him at the door about a Jedi or anything like that, which is pretty smart. And he's gotten smarter over his time, and I think that plays in pretty well here. But he gets in, and not everything seems quite so bright inside the city. Nobody wants to talk to him. People are like dodging him, like kind of moving away from him. And then there's this man that doesn't want to that. There's the only one that talks to him, and he says, please don't talk to us or anyone, which is really interesting. So yeah, like this is, I think this is an unanswered question, because, and maybe you have a take on this, or because I don't know why nobody would talk to him.
Well, sorry, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it relates back to what was happening at the start of the episode, where they were going to sacrifice prisoners. It's about, they know they'll get in trouble if they talk to outsiders, because there are literally people strung out outside the palace or whatever the magistrate's building is.
Oh yeah.
It's like they can't talk to anyone. They just have to. They're just under this iron fist of this rule.
Yeah, and they're definitely they're terrified apparently. Yeah.
Yeah. And it relates back to like later in the episode where he does actually end up helping and that kind of thing.
This guy actually shows up quite a bit. My take on it is that he was probably the mayor or the governor or whatever of this town.
Like he's just trying to protect people.
He was he was the previous president, and he's been deposed, and now he's in kind of living in exile, trying to help out whoever he can. I might have thought he was these kids' father at first. But then again, he might have just been helping them, giving them some food, trying to do what good he can, So yeah. So that was pretty interesting. But then, of course, certainly they're interrupted by the guards, who kind of give him that knowing look. I'm like, did you talk to him? And they want to, he gets escorted to the capital, or the main building, or the mayor's house, where the magistrate wants to speak with him. And I think this is kind of a good look, because like you were talking about with the prisoners, we get a look at them, and they're being tortured. This is almost like a Star Wars version of being crucified. It does seem like, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you can see like the same, like the electricity kind of going. You can see their bones kind of show out through in some of these scenes, which is pretty interesting. And my guess is that these were probably people who resisted this new regime. You know, these were probably the people who were brave that tried to fight back and were put on display. You know, just as a warning, like these guys picked up threw a rock at one of my guards. Don't you even think of doing that, because you will be up here. There's empty spots available. You know, so this lady who's running this town, she's not nice. She even says to Ahsoka that these people's lives mean nothing to her. So she's clearly established as a somebody you want to hate right away. But even more so once,
no nuance.
Yeah. Well, once we get inside, she is living in luxury. You know, she has the only nice, kind of beautiful place in the entire region, it seems. You know, where she's got water and she's got trees that are actually alive, and fish, and she's feeding fish, which, you know, doesn't look like there was any water. So we kind of get introduced to her, and classic villain. But she kind of gives Mando a quest, and she wants him to kill a Jedi, and he doesn't. I like the way he kind of played his card. He didn't say anything about it. He didn't ask what her name was. He didn't give any indication that he was already here looking for a Jedi anyway. But she gives him this. She kind of bribes him with this spear made of pure Beskar, and I love the sound effect. Right? This is, you mentioned sound before, dude. They're knocking it out of the park here. What did you think of this?
Yeah, big time. It's like, I thought it was Beskar when they first showed it off, and the way they communicate it, like, it's like, that's it. We get it. Cool.
I want that to be like my ringtone when I get a phone call now. Like, I bet you I bet you it'll show up. Plus, it's more merchandising. And now, interesting comments from the chat. Daniel Roberts says the settlement gunslinger is Kyle Reese from Terminator 1. Which, now that you said that totally brings. I didn't even put two and two together. I did think he looked a little familiar.
Don't think he is, actually. Are we talking about Lang?
Yeah, Lang.
Michael Biehn.
The original Terminator movie. Kyle Reese.
It is.
Yeah.
How did I not pick up on that?
That is, dude. That's pretty cool. I didn't really like the first Terminator movie that much until Terminator 2 came out, and I fell in love with that as a kid. I fell in love with Terminator 2, and so then I went back and watched the first Terminators again, multiple times.
I watched them both. I watched them both as an adult, and I got to say, I love Terminator 1 because of Kyle Reese.
Oh, yeah.
That character is so well done.
How a man could stand up to a machine like that, and hold his own was...
That monologue where he's in the interrogation and he just starts to yell directly at the camera.
Oh, like, yeah.
It's going to tear her heart out. It's like, oh, it's so powerful. I love it.
I'll have to revisit those again, because those were classic.
Disappointed I missed that myself, actually. Well done.
I have not seen... I'm going to confess, I have not seen the latest Terminator movie, and I heard it was actually pretty well done. It just was,
Apparently it's okay, yeah.
Yeah, well, I've heard. Compared to previous Terminator films, like they had been on a kind of a streak of, like, subpar films for a while. I always enjoy them regardless, though. I really liked the Christian Bale one. But because I had fun, it was fun.
It was entertaining for sure,
and it had some nice Easter eggs to Terminator 2, because he had he played the Guns N' Roses on the thing when he went to go. Oh, I loved.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah. All right, so wow, we got
Star Wars.
We got some active chat, and so we got some interesting things. Spartan says he's still surprised that the Star Trek the ST wasn't more of a mirror of the OT, the sequel trilogy. Oh, okay. Well, you're talking about the films. All right. Oh, I'm gonna leave this. This is what I get for just reading comments live.
That's a long chat, by
I know. Do you want to be here all night long or all day for Nick, who's it's not nighttime for him. He is from the future. We would catch up to Nick's future if we kept talking about the sequel trilogy.
That's it.
But yeah. So this spear is actually pretty nice. And I think, I don't know, but like kind of looking at this spear, especially after a rewatch, it appears almost like corrugated, or like there's lines in it. And I'm curious if they made the spear to where it can like collapse and extend. You know, like remember like the older toy lightsabers and stuff like that, how you could like fling them out and they would like, and then you could like push them back in. Like if it's gonna be spring loaded.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of hope not, because I feel like that would just be more of a blatant merchandising kind of thing. You know, like because they could do that even if it doesn't do that, they could still do it. But like it'd be kind of, I could see him like having it on his belt just in case he needs it, and then he's like he clicks it against his Beskar and like it pops into action. But I feel like that would make it more flimsy. You know.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I just think it's
I think it's
cool
just the craftsmanship. Yeah. It is kind of cool. Here's an interesting question. Mm-hmm. So somebody mentioned the sequel trilogy. You did see the sequel trilogy, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm all caught up.
Captain Phasma had a spear in episode 8, and
okay,
yeah. I wonder if they're gonna try and tie this spear into that and say that this ended up falling into the First Order's hands, and she ends up.
I mean, the whole reveal with Phasma was, yes, her armor is bulletproof. Mm-hmm. That was the whole thing in The Last Jedi.
But her armor is specifically not Beskar, unless of course they retcon it, which they've done before. Because there was this whole story written about Phasma, where she went and got, like, Palpatine had this shuttle that was like from Naboo, from his home planet. So it had that chrome, like the Naboo chromed out ships, and so she basically got metal from Palpatine's shuttle to make her armor, and that was why it was shiny. So
okay.
But that was a book that was written before The Mandalorian, so
it could be an alloy made with Beskar.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows?
Do whatever they want, I guess.
I don't know. Yeah, they do exactly. You know what? I think that's one thing we have to learn is, especially after the sequel trilogies, don't think about it too much. Especially after episode 9. Just don't think about it. No. No, don't think. Don't let the hamster turn the wheel in your brain. No. It's just look at the pretty lights. Just look at the pretty lights.
It's a Star Wars.
Yeah.
Just a Star Wars.
It's a Space Wizards. And it's fun. It can be fun and also frustrating at the same time. All right.
That's right. Exactly right. Yeah.
So, so we get Phasma's baton extended, though. Oh, well, maybe she modified. Maybe she likes this one, and no, who knows? I don't care. You know what? Spears are cool. They can be two different spears in the entire. It's a whole galaxy. There can be more than one spear. All right.
No, come on now. Everything has to have relevance to everything else. It's Star Wars. You know how it works.
I just want to know why we don't have nunchucks yet, because Beskar nunchucks would be really cool. Wow. Beskar.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I would love it.
I guess so.
Yeah. All right, so they escort kind of Mando out the gates. Now, he doesn't, somebody in the chat pointed out, he doesn't actually agree to it. He just said, my price is high. So he never verbatim agrees to this bounty. He just kind of leads them to believe that he's agreed to this bounty. And, they kind of see him out. And Lang is the gunslinger, who's kind of the number 2. He's like, well, good luck. You're going to need it where you're going. And sure enough, he kind of walks out into the middle of nowhere. Ahsoka, attacks him by surprise, presumably maybe assuming that he's kind of sent by the magistrate to kill her, which, her intuition serves her well. And we learned that Beskar is lightsaber resistant, more so than you might have thought. This was this kind of surprised me.
Full on. Yeah, like you would have thought like it'd be like a little bit, and then you can like sort of force it through, but no, just wallops him with 2 lightsabers, and nope, just completely reflects it.
Yeah, that was really interesting to me, and I'm gonna be curious if they kind of touch on it in the next episode, like if he's got like some dents or scoring or something like that on his armor that he needs to get kind of buffed out, because I would like to think that a lightsaber can cut through Beskar eventually, right?
Yeah.
Because, all right, so Spartan mentions Cortosis. I'm glad you brought up Cortosis, because as a player of the Star Wars RPG, like a lot of this stuff is important, and because the stats and what beats what, rock, scissors, paper, kind of for all of this is important. So Cortosis is a type of material. I think it was first mentioned in the Clone Wars, but in the sequel trilogy, the Praetorian Guard happened to be wearing Cortosis armor, and it's resistant but not impervious to lightsabers. And so basically, like glancing blows right? Like as long as it's coming from a side, it can bounce it off. And certainly if you watch that fight in episode 8, there were some attacks that were deflected away, but a straight on impale would go right through it. So as long as it was a glancing blow, it could deflect it partially, and that's kind of how I thought Beskar might have worked. But here they were like, nope, completely, almost completely impervious.
I've not played KOTOR myself. Is that what they had in Jedi Outcast? Oh, it's been so long since I played it, but that I know that the name rings a bell.
So
they had
I'm trying to think here because I believe in the RPG. And also, to be fair, in an RPG, a lot of things kind of slide for the sake of game balance. But I think it was the electric from certain electro-powered vibro weapons could potentially deflect the lightsaber because there was energy there. So you could have certain electric-based weapons kind of stay them a little bit.
Well, like vibranium.
Mm-hmm. Like vibranium, yeah.
Yeah, adamantium, like all of those things. There are rules.
Mm-hmm. Now, all right, so you know what? Would be a really fun one to sit down and do one day is to do a Marvel Star Wars crossover, and see what would happen. What would happen if Mandalorians got a hold of vibranium armor and could make some that would be really cool. What about Worf? What about Klingons meeting up with Mandalorians, and now all of a sudden you've got Klingons with Mandalorian armor and a Beskar batleth. Oh man, that's, and of course the Vulcans would be Jedi because they would, I don't know. I'm just thinking that would be
very
cool
good,
stuff.
very good.
Yeah. Right. Well, anyway, and now that I've just gone completely off topic, let's bring things back. So yeah, we got a great a short but very powerful fight scene here. Mando kind of pushes her back. Doesn't know I don't think he knows what's happening. He pulls out the flamethrower. We get some acrobatics, and this is the type of stuff I'm talking about. She wouldn't be able to do if she had 4 foot long headpiece on. It just wouldn't work. And he kind of gets her, kind of like how Boba Fett got Luke Skywalker, just with that whipcord launcher, and ties her up. But she's prepared, and she jumps over and kind of breaks free. And all of this happens in 10 seconds. It's so quick. And then we get this standoff, and he shouts her name and pauses everything. And I was blown away. It was just because now we're still only maybe 15, 20 minutes into the episode. We've already had 2 Ahsoka fight scenes, So I really like the way this went down.
Time.
No, it's beautiful, and he's he gives her the line, "Bo-Katan sent me to find you," and she sees the child, and she's like, "Well, I hope we need to talk about him," and a lot of people were curious how she would react when she saw him because she knew Yoda, and and it was a satisfying reaction when she sees him. I felt pretty good.
It was well done.
Yeah.
Because the whole origins of Yoda has always been a bit of a mysterious thing in Star Wars. Mm-hmm. We don't know what race he is, but do the people the characters rather in Star Wars know what race Yoda is? There's always been a big question mark over that. So I suppose they seem to have some. I mean, obviously, she knew that Grogu was a part of Yoda's race, but does she know any more than that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is interesting because there's also another of that. So basically, we get a nice scene where she's kind of meditating and kind of communing with who we learn is now called Grogu. And that's another big takeaway of this episode is that the child has a name. I mean, hopefully after being alive for 50 years, you've been given a name at least once. And yeah, his name is Grogu. And she talks with the Mandalorian about the child and what his name is and how she knew only one other person named this. And this got some people a little upset too because casual fans might not know this, but for those of us who've kind of studied some of this stuff, there was another of Yoda's species on the Jedi Council in Episode 1. It was a background character, but her name was Yaddle. And she was only in one scene very, very briefly, but she's, there's almost like a cult following for Yaddle. Because I'm wait, Yoda can't be that mysterious. There was another one of him. There was a female. And as soon as we saw Baby Yoda, a lot of people were was this Yoda and Yaddle's kid? And then why wasn't Yaddle in any of the other films? you know, and
Wasn't Yaddle removed though in some of the later editions?
I don't know, but she was on screen. I mean, she's
I
canon. You know,
I agree.
yeah,
But
yeah.
this
I know they
George's
changed.
meddling we're talking about here.
I know they changed Yoda because Yoda was a puppet in Episode 1, and then they redid him to change him back to CGI. Because I mean, he was a cringy puppet. Like they could have done better.
Man, I love that puppet so much.
You like the
I was
puppet
so
better?
disappointed with that.
Well, the CGI wasn't great either. Like it's like they didn't get. I think the puppet could have been better. Like, how do you go from like mastery of a puppet, which was, you know, Empire Strikes Back, you know, to like 20 years later to like a worse puppet? Like I feel like they, you know, I feel like they could have, they were trying so hard to be like super high tech that they lost the magic of what made it. You know, I
will admit I'm very biased. Like I always prefer practical effects. Even a bad puppet is better than good CGI in my opinion. Whoa. And I was so glad they made him a puppet in The Last Jedi.
That was exactly. Look, I'm going to tell you guys. I don't care who knows it. At the time, before Episode 9 came out, I loved The Last Jedi. I would even have gone so far as to say it may have been my favorite Star Wars movie out of all of them. I say at the time because a lot of that was predicated on the direction I thought they were taking the movie. And then when 9 came out and it found out like they had no plan whatsoever and 8 was just one guy's idea for a standalone film, then it kind of fell to pieces for me. But 8 was great.
I agree.
For reasons like that.
It should have been like a trilogy for either director. Like I think we're on the same page there.
Yeah,
for sure.
that was the number one and maybe the biggest problem I think that will linger for the sequel trilogy is not any particular decision or not any particular joke that fell flat, but the fact that the vision changed and then changed again and then still wasn't settled on, and that there was not a plan for the trilogy. And I think that's one of the things that makes this show so good, like circling roundabout, right? Like that's one of the things that makes this show so great is that you've got Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni kind of at the helm. George Lucas was on scene during all of Ahsoka's scenes. I don't know if you know this, but like George Lucas and Dave Filoni were like, because they both were there at Ahsoka's birth too. This was their creation, and now they're watching her finally show up in live action. So it's just such a cool thing.
Big time. And just on that note again, it still feels like watching this episode. It feels like even episode 1, it still feels like it's all connected. Like there's a common strand. This show has been planned for at least these 2 seasons, as far as we know so far.
Sure. And I'm going to come back to that, the planning thing, because I do have a criticism about some of this, but I'm going to come to it later because those of you, anybody who watches here who follows another YouTuber by the name of Eckhart's Ladder, brought up a really good point earlier today, which I'm going to come in when we close. So we'll get to that. But we get a good scene here with Ahsoka talking to Yoda, or Grogu, Baby Yoda. I mean, I still want to call him Baby Yoda. You know, it's going to be a while before I can call him Grogu.
I'll be honest, I've never liked Baby Yoda because of how much it confuses the casual fans. Like my parents, I had to explain to them because they just started recently watching. No, that's not Yoda. I realize there's confusion. It's a baby of Yoda's race, but
there was some confusion in season 1 because a lot of people thought he was a clone of Yoda, so he may have actually been Yoda. So you know, this is probably the closest we're going to get to confirmation that he is in fact not Yoda, unless of course he was a clone. Because she gives us a little backstory that he was actually at the Jedi Temple during the prequel trilogy and was taken like he was trained, so he was apparently at least, you know, he was stronger with the Force than he was, but then he was taken after the fall of the Jedi, and then there was darkness in his kind of memories. He kind of blanked out. So I feel like they're doing they're going to have him go through some kind of discovery in the future where he kind of remembers some of the lessons and who his master might have been.
Oh, it's so intentional.
Oh yeah,
it's going to be a significant character. Whoever took him from the temple. Yeah, and like I can already think of like 5 off the top of my head. Like, oh, it could be them, could be them, could be them.
We don't know.
And could be Yoda.
We don't even know that it was a light side character that took him from the temple. It could have been an Inquisitor.
Exactly.
Right? Maybe like the first thing, or maybe it was even Darth Vader himself, like took him. I doubt that. That's a little bit of a stretch, but well, I mean, okay, hear me out.
Sure,
Anakin,
let's do it.
Anakin.
Yep.
Moments after being knighted as Darth Vader, has to go kill the younglings. Off screen, what you don't see is he's slicing down all these kids, and now at the very back of the pile, the littlest one, he just can't bring himself to do. So he picks this one up and he's like, you'll be gone one way or another, and takes him somewhere and dumps him, and that's why he feels darkness after that. Wouldn't that be something? I mean,
I feel like that overcomplicates Anakin's story at that point, but
I
don't know. It's almost like what he does with Starkiller in The Force Unleashed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Is it really necessary? What if it's speaking of that? What if it's Starkiller? What if it's Sam Witwer who?
No, that's too deep, man. Come on.
No, a new Starkiller, a new Galen Merrick. Right? Well, you know what?
Maybe we'll see.
Well, I actually have more. Look, anything I do, any kind of speculation, I always want it to circle around to Sam Witwer because he's like my favorite Star Wars actor. So I want him back, and
I agree.
I don't care if they have to write an all new character for him or just reintroduce him like underpowered, not as strong as he was in those games, but he would make a great Inquisitor, I think.
What I will say is I do think that the trauma specifically spoken about with Grogu, I'm calling it now, I reckon that he did witness Anakin killing all the younglings. I think that's why he blacked it out.
That could be, yeah. Maybe it's one of the other kids. Maybe the oldest kid in there maybe somehow managed to like dash out the window because... if you think about it, like, are all the kids, like, after he cuts down, like, the first 2 or 3 kids, how many of them are just going to stand there? Somebody, may actually have, started to, like, wouldn't they start scattering? Like, you can't walk into a room full of geese and then start hacking them up with a machete. I've tried. It doesn't work. I mean, I haven't. That was a joke.
Remember in episode 3 how Lucas's son escapes but gets shot by the clones outside the temple?
Right.
So, yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. All right, so yeah, like we're learning an awful lot, and that was a really deep cut, and it was worth talking about for a little bit. But then we get some training. Sure. Ahsoka's trying to test Grogu in the morning with the little rock, and he doesn't respond to her. He doesn't want to send it back to her. We learned a little bit of this is because he was deliberately trying not to use the Force. Because the Jedi were illegal for a while and all of this, so he tried to hide his abilities to stay safe. And they kind of regressed, and that's kind of why he doesn't use them as much, because he's kind of forgotten. And I think that's, for those of you who have played Jedi Fallen Order, that kind of mirrors the main character's storyline in that, and that you don't use the Force for so long, and you begin to forget, and then can then maybe have to relearn things that you've forgotten. But he does respond when the Mandalorian he pulls out the bauble, which is back to the beginning of this. This is why everything was in there for a reason, right?
Oh yeah, like when I saw that, I'm like, okay, what's the payoff for that going to be? Why did he put it in his armor? Why did he not put it back in the ship? Oh, there we go. That's where we needed it.
Yeah. So I like that quite a bit, and. Spartan says the next episode is directed by Rodriguez, so maybe Machete in space. That's funny because my machete about the geese. No, just for clarification, I've never walked into a room full of geese with a machete. I can't even imagine that actually being a realistic scenario. Not ever happened. All right.
If you want your YouTube career to continue, I recommend not doing that.
Yeah, I don't.
Actually, someone in chat mentioned Yoda's apprentice. That's an interesting thought.
Well, that
Although
was Dooku.
Technically all the younglings were Yoda's apprentice, so yeah.
Well, not necessarily his Padawan learner though. So like the only Padawan we know of that he took was Dooku, and that was I actually read the backstory for Dooku, and yeah, it was deliberately pointed out as a rarity for any master on the council to take an apprentice, but Yoda decided as a special case to take Dooku as his Padawan.
Yeah. I love that whole story with Dooku and how he trained Qui-Gon. Getting off on a tangent again. It really bothered me how that wasn't included in the films, because that was like the most interesting part of those stories. But anyway, sorry.
You know why?
Getting off track again.
You know why? There's a very good reason why it wasn't included in the films.
No, I don't.
They didn't think about it until 20 years afterwards.
Oh, okay.
That's
Okay.
it's such a cop out. No, but yeah, that's
enough.
well, that's one of the things that Star Wars does is a lot of things just happen by accident, and then these writers scramble to kind of fill in the dots, and that's why you watch Episode 4. Every single Cantina alien has probably 2 backstories by now: the Legends backstory and the new canon backstory. So nobody can just be an extra. Everybody has a first,
Exactly
middle, and
right.
last name. Their grandparents have a backstory.
I
So,
made this joke when the quad jumper came out in XWing. Like, it has this entire thesis written on the quad jumper now because it was in a movie for 10 seconds.
yes, because it was. I don't even think it was a real prop. I think it was probably just a backdrop, or like a matte painting, and they blew it up.
Yeah, I think it was. It was. Yeah.
So Ahsoka doesn't want to train the child. She doesn't want to train Grogu because he's got a connection to Mando, and Mando's like kind of bribes her into it. But it was a nice little throwback to Anakin Skywalker there, because she says like, I've seen what it can do to the worst of us, or the best of us even.
My first reaction to that was, every time a Jedi has to be trained, there have to be that. Oh, I can't train. Well, I know, but it makes sense. It makes sense this time around. You got to remind ourselves that yes, Luke was the exception to the rule, where he was the first one sort of to defy the conventions of the Jedi. Where yes, it's a very good point because of his attachment with Lando. Yes, they probably shouldn't train him.
With Lando.
Mando.
Oh,
sorry.
Mando. Yeah.
Did I say Lando?
You did say Lando. I'm like, wait a second.
Oh, oops.
Have you seen
okay.
spoilers for the next episode? Perhaps Billy D.
I don't know.
Well. What have we here? Ahsoka Tano.
It's not the cool thing. Like, as fans, yes, we want to see Grogu get trained.
Yeah.
It's probably not the right thing for the characters in universe to train him. I accept that.
Oh yeah, especially because he's kind of got a father, and you're like you're trying to pawn him off. But from a certain point of view, isn't that what the Jedi did all the time anyway? They'd go around stealing kids, right? Like
exactly right. Yeah.
So, but I also think there's another reason why people are reluctant to train, and I don't think this will be the last time we see a master reluctant to train an apprentice, is because of the trauma that happened to the Jedi Order. Like, the whole order was like wiped out in one day and made illegal, punishable by death. So they spent an entire generation of like fighting for survival, trying to hide who they were. And now you're suddenly asking them to make more. Like, you're asking them to advertise, and it's I could see a lot of people being reluctant for that after 20 years or more of trying to hide what you are, because it's criminal. It's interesting. It's and that can even be like a social reflection on a lot of stigmas and things that still exist today that we're now kind of getting past. But I think there's a whole lot to that. But he kind of bribes her and is like, "All right, well, I'll help you take on these. I'll help you kind of attack the castle if you kind of promise to train him." And she, you don't really hear her make the promise, but you kind of assume that she's like, "All right, well, I'll think about it." Kind of in the same way Mando didn't agree to kill the Jedi, but it was kind of assumed that was the deal. So Ahsoka kind of pulls one over on him, and they attack, and she kind of scales the wall. And at first it's just her, so it's like she's like she's kind of just taking on the whole thing by herself. And I want to pause here for a minute because I just love the facial expressions Rosario Dawson is giving here. We see a lot of this throughout the episode, but she studied Ahsoka.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, Mando is made by people who love Star Wars.
Exactly.
It's things like this that really show it off.
It is. It's just everything. And this wasn't the only time it happened, but I wanted to grab this particular smirk she gives to this one guy right before he runs away. It's right out of the animation. And I think it's got to be hard for an actor to try to act as somebody else's character on its own. But kick that up a notch when you're acting trying to be an animated character. But she does it. She does it here, and this is just really impressive. So my hat's off to Rosario Dawson for her performance in this episode. It's just, this was absolutely breathtaking. So she kind of cuts her way through everybody and kind of walks up, and and she slices that bell in half too, and then all of a sudden they all line up, and this is just like one of those old Japanese samurai movies where kind of that lone hero kind of faces off against all of the bad guys, and it's beautiful. And she kind of gives her one more chance, like, tell me what I want to know. Where's your master? And and she's just like, kill her. And they all kind of give chase. She throws down the pauldron too. It's like, your Mando failed, or your bounty hunter failed. Which we know was not true. But it'd been really funny if she killed him off screen and like, oh, this was actually the series finale.
Was that the piece of armor he made in episode 1 or 2? I think it may have been. I
think so. I think it was the first one, but it did have the insignia, so it had been updated at the end of the season when he got his Mudhorn signet.
Oh yeah.
Because it did have the Mudhorn signet on there. So, but yeah, so and we get this great chase. She's ducking through alleys, climbing over rooftops. We get a lot of a lot of cloak and dagger kind of scenes, and of course the magistrate just says that kill the prisoners. And I think this was kind of a cool moment because while we don't get a whole lot about this guy who was the mayor, I think his name is Mayor Wang or something like that. They kind of credited him on IMDb with, although his name isn't spoken or referenced anywhere.
I do have it up here. I'll have a look.
It's actually, he was kind of named after the actor's first name, and it was
Governor Wing, apparently.
Wing, thank you. But yeah, so but like this is where I thought his courage kind of shone through, because the guards were going to execute the prisoners, and he started to run up. He's like, my life may be forfeit, but I've got to try and save these people. And so, and then Mando kind of shows up and almost turns on him because he was running in at the same time. This may have been one of the only scenes that might have been a little confusing for some people, because like, wait, why did he run in there? And I'm like, I think it was clear to me that he was going to try and do something, but it happened so fast. I feel like there may have been some stuff that got cut from this scene,
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah,
I think it translated well.
Yeah, no, it tells you just enough that this guy cares for his people, not just the children, but I think he cares for everybody, and that he's a good guy. And he kind of helps Mando free the prisoners after Mando dispatches the guards.
I think the confusion there is, like, how did he know that Mando was a good guy at that point and all that kind of stuff? But as I said, I think it was just enough to translate it properly.
Exactly. It was like, at a certain point, you put too much in and you kind of take away from the flow of the story. Although,
absolutely right.
These episodes are kind of short, and I feel like part of me is like, you could have made these episodes a full hour, and I would not have complained a bit.
I guess
that's my own personal take on it, but I am not a filmmaker. I've not studied film.
I was gonna say these are not cheap to make.
All I know is I like what I like, and I want more of this. I want more of all of it. And so if they want to do that in the future, if they care about what I have to say, just give me more. Yeah. All right. So
exactly right. Yeah. We
get more of Lang and the HK droids. The HKs are actually pretty cool. This was another kind of Easter egg drop. Now they weren't the same. For the fans who've played the Knights of the Old Republic, you had, I think, HK-47 was the assassin droid, but these are HK-87s, I want to say. So it's a different number. Like, they're a newer model, but there's something really cool about these droids, and that I don't think it turned up until after people had kind of seen the episode and gone through it multiple times, and it's hard to see unless you blow it up and kind of magnify the lighting a little bit. But on the sides of their head, they have a symbol. I'm curious if you notice about this or not, or if anybody in the chat has noticed this. The symbol is of the 7th Fleet, the Imperial 7th Fleet, which is the fleet that Thrawn was the commander of. So Thrawn's fleet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
so I'm
just
looking at chat.
Yeah, and so it's yes. Oh, did you see the 7th Fleet? So yeah, Mariano actually mentioned that before I. Yes, Mariano, I did see that. Or actually, I will say I didn't even notice that until other people had kind of brought it up. So I'm kind of stealing the the good eyes of other eagle-eyed viewers who have kind of brought it to my attention. But I thought this was pretty cool, and I didn't actually notice it like on my third viewing, trying to pause at certain moments. You can see the outline, but you have to really be looking for it. So I don't know who caught this the first time, but I mean, they're brilliant work. So that's kind of cool because, we'll get to Thrawn a little bit later, but it's interesting knowing that these droids were, I guess, part of his fleet, so to speak. All right, let's see. Did the Leo meme when you first saw it? The Leo where he kind of tips his glass, kind of like that. The Leo DiCaprio meme. Yeah. And we got a little Easter egg of a Loth cat, or I believe it's a.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw that. I was watching and going, is that a Loth cat? But we're not on Lothal.
I think there's a generic term for the greater species as it exists everywhere, and Loth cat is the Lothal specific version. Because I know there was a different term for it, and the name escapes me right now for the specific type of cat that is. But basically, yeah, they're so similar that. But yeah, and we saw one I think in season 1 of The Mandalorian when he was in episode 4 when they went to that the village where they made the spotchka, and there was the woman that Mando almost wanted to settle down with. In that first, there was a bar where he meets Cara Dune. And,
yeah, maybe, yeah.
And the cat kind of growls at the child, and so yeah.
Sorry, Wikipedia. Loth cats were small felines, member of the Tuca family.
Tuca cat, yes.
Yes.
So Tuca cat is the term I was looking for. So yeah, I think this is more properly a Tuca cat, whereas a Loth cat would be a Tuca cat native to Lothal. But tomato in this case.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, how do you refer to the red fruit/vegetable that often goes in salads in Australia? Do you call it a tomato or tomato or
tomato?
Tomato.
Yes, tomato. Usually, and this is not true all the time. We usually go to the British one.
Okay,
but there are plenty of the Australian English is completely messed up. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we use French words.
Oh, so really?
Let's just That's
interesting.
I can't think of any particular, but there are some words that don't translate in all 3 different versions of English.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Learn something new every day. All right. All right. So let's go ahead and keep going. All right. So I'm loving this. We get some really cool shots of Ahsoka sneaking up behind people and just playing complete ninja, striking people down, and we get probably some of the most beautiful shots we're ever going to see on TV, I think, in this episode. So big salute to the guys who made all this happen. Everybody from the FX to the costuming to the direction and all of it. Mm-hmm. And they're able to take down everybody pretty much. And Ahsoka kind of gets on the wall. She's about to jump over in. Lang kind of confronts Mando at the gates, and says hey, you took up with the Jedi, and he goes, looks that way as Ahsoka kind of jumps in, and they kind of have this standoff, and Lang's kind of inching closer. Mando's it's far enough, and this. I mean, it seemed like he has a shotgun basically, and
yes,
and he wants to get close.
A pump action shotgun blaster.
Oh,
what a great idea!
I love it. I think we had some stuff. I don't know if you ever played Imperial Assault, but there was some your Trandoshan bounty hunters, your generic Trandoshans had something very similar called a scatter gun, I believe is the term they use in Star Wars for something like that.
Oh, that might have been in Jedi Outcast as well, come to think of it.
Yeah, I think you had a flechette. You had the flechette launcher, which was kind of big. Yeah. But yeah, this was just a strange thing to me because he referred to this guy Lang earlier as a hired gunslinger, I believe. And I can't imagine a hired gunslinger relying on such a short-range weapon. My guess is that he had this specifically to combat a Jedi, because let's face it, if I'm a lightsaber-wielding Jedi who deflects blaster bolts, I'm going to have a much harder time deflecting buckshot. And I think that's why he's got this. But I don't think they kind of made that clear. He only shot at Ahsoka once, and if you do notice, she jumps away as opposed to deflecting his shot. So I think that's my take on why he was using such an inappropriate weapon, at least for a fight with a Mandalorian. But it's probably a lot better of a Jedi weapon, or Jedi fighting weapon.
Yeah, agreed. I like that.
Yeah. And man, we get Ahsoka versus the magistrate inside her quarters, and or kind of on the lake. I am gonna say this may be my favorite Star Wars duel of all time. This was
Jeez.
so beautiful. And I know that there's
a bold claim.
There's a lot of good duels, right? Like there's a lot of really good lightsaber fights and duels, but this one is elegant, and the sound is especially good in this one too, which is something you don't usually draw attention to as much, because like the way she kind of slams her staff on the ground and then kind of has it balancing between her forefinger and thumb. Like this is masterful. I loved this entire duel so much.
I would agree with you from a choreography point of view. But I love it when the duels in Star Wars really, really inform the story. Like the original trilogy, those 3 duels,
especially Luke
Vader
versus
and Luke
in Empire Strikes Back, right? Like that one's huge.
Empire or Jedi, I think they're both fantastic. The end of Return of the Jedi, where Vader goads him out and he just starts walloping on with a lightsaber. It's like, it's so good.
Yes,
but I like that for different reasons, is what I'm saying. So
no, that's a good point. That's a really good point, and I think you have to, because I've been kind of planning out a video of like the best lightsaber duels, and then this one qualifies as far as I'm concerned, and I think in order to really to rank them, I think you have to take all of those things into consideration. This particular duel, you probably have to think about what's at stake, and there's not as much. Like in the grand scheme of things, there's arguably much less at stake in this duel. I think Ahsoka had the upper hand and could have probably clearly killed this woman sooner, but she didn't want to kill her. She wanted information, so she was trying to like get her to the point where she would speak. But cinematography and choreography, the beauty and the sound, like visually, this one was an absolute gem to behold.
Very unique.
Yeah,
very unique.
Yeah, and it's the first one that is I don't know if it's maybe at least the first one in live action. No, as a matter of fact, it's not. I was going to say that doesn't involve 2 lightsabers, or it only has like the one person has a lightsaber. But I guess Finn versus that one riot control stormtrooper, he didn't have a lightsaber either.
I guess if you call that a duel.
I think you have to, just because we have so few, and really in the big picture, it has to count. But it was so sloppy, right? So. And it was meant to be sloppy.
You could also count Obi-Wan versus the Magna Guards in Episode 3. Where he cuts off the head of the droid, and then it just turns around and like spins the thing headless. So good.
True. Yeah. There's quite a bit. I want to say that the Finn one should have been better, because I felt like that was a good building moment for a character that would eventually become a Jedi on screen. Except they threw that all away, and then he just became a dude who was just walking around riding a horse.
Oh yeah, I've spoken about this. I don't think Finn not being a Jedi is a huge deal. The problem is they then didn't really do much with the character. Like. Anyway, that's a whole other discussion.
I feel like Episode 7 was all about like Finn, turning from the First Order to turning towards the light, getting the lightsaber, fighting Kylo Ren on his path to become a Jedi, and they threw it away. And they just said, no. On second thought, you're gonna go visit gambling and rescue horses and then ride horses.
I quite like that he didn't become a Jedi, but still chose to take up the lightsaber against Kylo. Like, that was powerful. Mm-hmm. It's just, you still have to do something with the character from that point on.
Yeah, he was wasted, and anything better than what he had given to him would have been great. But I still wanted Finn as a Jedi. That's me. Or
yeah, for sure.
I'll give you a cooler one. I know we're off topic again, but it's fun to get off topic sometimes. Here's a cool one.
Let's do it.
Finn had this huge back injury. His spine had been cut open at the end of 7. At the beginning of 8, it was, as much as I loved 8, one of the things I didn't like 8 is I didn't like the direction Finn went in 8. Like off on the side quest, the whole side arc with him and Rose going to the gambling planet. I didn't like that. What I would have liked is he gets like, hey, the damage to his spine is so severe we can't fix it normally. He's got to use cybernetics. He ends up getting a straight up like Iron Man exoskeleton suit, and now we've got not Iron Man exactly, but basically the Star Wars equivalent of like War Machine or Iron Man, and he's just like poof, poof, and like now think of the merchandising and the cosplay you would have from that. That's
yeah, sure.
And that would have given, and then he could have also eventually, maybe by Episode 9, affixed, like built a lightsaber attachment for it. So it's not as elegant as a lightsaber, but it's like, you know how a lot of big mechs in like BattleTech and Armored Core and those games have a sword so they can dash forward with their boosters and cut through stuff? Like I have this whole vision for Finn. I think John Boyega would really like it, but you know, I'm not a filmmaker, and it would probably cost an awful lot to animate all of that stuff. But okay, cool. So yeah. Well, so all of that from this one photo here, right? Like, but overall, I really did like the duel. It was artistically done. And another thing that made this duel especially cool is Mando and Lang listening outside of the wall, because it pans back and forth.
It cuts back, and then you hear like the bang bang of like the Beskar and the it's gorgeous.
And so that added a whole different dimension to this. Like again, the sound and the way they were able to add extra drama to this fight, that these two guys outside were waiting. It was such a unique take on a lightsaber fight. I think it's going to help this episode kind of go down as like a great episode to rewatch and to kind of go back to as Dave Filoni just doing great things with Star Wars. But yeah, and then like dude kind of lays down his weapons, like, it looks like you won, and you almost thought he was going to be honorable for a second, but he had that smirk on his face that he wasn't. So he draws, and Mando's just faster, like a complete boss.
Here's a question. I liked Lang a lot, and I thought, oh, okay, this is the start of a new interesting character, and he just gets shot. I didn't feel. I wanted him to be like a returning antagonist. Like, how do you feel about this?
I think it's interesting. I wonder if it wasn't maybe a missed opportunity to an extent. I would have liked it if Mando just shot it to wound him, like shot the gun out of his hand or something like that, and like maybe even shot his hand off, and but because one thing that made me like Lang was right before this, when he was talking to Mando, he says, well, you and I aren't too different. We're willing to lay down our lives for the right cause. And he says, which this isn't. Like, it was like he had just an ounce of humanity. Like, he's a hired gun, but he's got a conscience. And like they humanized him right before they killed him. And I was like, oh, what? And maybe if there is any, there may be some criticism to this episode. I'm kind of still on the hype of really enjoying this episode, but I think if we go back and we analyze it, Lang dying here, or him even taking that shot at Mando, was unnecessary, and it was maybe wasteful.
Yeah, but it sort of reminds me of I completely forget this character's name. In the first season on Tatooine.
Yes. That young guy.
No. The lady. She was in
Oh yes, May. She was from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, she was May in Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but Ming-Na Wen. Ming-Na Wen.
Thank you.
Is her name? Yes.
Thank you. I'm very bad with names.
It's okay. I am too, but that one just stuck with me because I used to watch Marvel. So yeah, she was great.
And she was taken away, off camera by maybe the cloners. Maybe this is what's happening with this guy too, possibly.
I think that the dude killed her. Because they showed her body, and then they showed it like the next day or that night, like she hadn't moved for a whole day, so I think she was kind of dead. But they built her up to be really cool. But at least she got a whole episode. Like this guy Lang only got like a fraction of an episode. He was just a supporting character. He honestly
was the side bad guy. Yeah.
You didn't even need him there. You could have had the HK droids do everything that he did. Like his whole purpose, I thought, to be in this episode was that he could, show up another day. And maybe that is it. Maybe he's actually not dead from this. Maybe he's just wounded. But I think if that was going to be the case, you have to show him crawling away at the end or something. And
you got to give a hint. Yeah.
Yeah, and they certainly didn't here. So I think there might have been a little bit of waste there. But still, I enjoyed it. I kind of saw what was going to happen there. It was like that trope of the bad guy who kind of fakes surrender. I just didn't feel like it matched up to the kind of the speech he gave right before that. So, and then of course the HK turns around, and I thought these droids were tougher, but apparently these are like cheaper than the assassin droids. I thought could take more than one gunshot, or maybe it's just a testament to Mando's accuracy.
The Mandalorian guns are really good. They talk about that in Rebels, I think.
Well, it apparently is. I mean, if it can do, Now, here's a question for you. Mm-hmm. Do you think Mando might possibly be Force sensitive.
No.
No? Okay.
I think that's why. I think one of the beautiful things about The Mandalorian overall is the fact that they've made the story small. They've focused on these new characters. I mean, anything's a possibility,
Sure.
but I think that it's falling back on these old Star Wars tropes that are not things that this story needs. One thing I want to say about this is I'm so glad that Ahsoka, it wasn't just pure fan service. It was just showing a part of Ahsoka's story and joining in for that a little bit, but then we're going to move away. It wasn't gratuitous, and I like that. And for the same reasons, no, I don't think they're going to go with that direction with Mando. I think it's more interesting if they don't.
You think it's like, for example, like what made me kind of think this is, first off, he gets that, this, like he had already moved his hand away, but he got the quick draw on Lang, and then completely by surprise just turns around and instantly gets like a critical headshot almost without even looking. In this, like, and all within like 30 seconds, it almost seems like Jedi reflexes. And so I think
it's a case of he knew that that's what Lang was going to try. He saw it coming.
And he's really good. I think it's, we've established that he's really good, but they're reminding you that he's really good. But I think it could be possible for him to be Force sensitive at some point. And I think again, this is just pure speculation here, but it might be interesting if they kind of dove into this maybe several seasons from now, to explore what it's like for somebody who is not necessarily strong with the Force. Because anytime we've seen somebody who is like Force sensitive, they always go on to become Jedi. What about those people who are what about somebody who's in the interim, who just has a little bit of the Force, not enough to become a Jedi? And maybe he falls into that category where he's Force attuned, but not Jedi reflexes, but enough to give him just that edge, because there's again, in the role-playing books and stuff, there's categories for like Force users that don't use lightsabers at all. They're just really good with guns, Yeah.
Exactly
it could be.
I remember in some of the old EU, there was some stories where Jabba was Force sensitive, which
no kidding.
Personally, I think that's obscene given the way Jabba was presented in the movie, but whatever. So,
it's all because the mind trick didn't work on him, so somebody just took that one line and wrote a whole story about it, right?
Yeah, but then like his Watto Force sensitive. I'm not going to have that conversation, but it's about
he flew, he could hover, and that's the Force, right?
Oh, it's got to be it.
Or was it wings?
It's the conversation about. You're exactly right. What is it to be Force sensitive and not be a Jedi?
Right.
So yeah, could be. Yeah.
And I think that would be I think there's actually room there for them to explore, but you don't want it to be too close to actual Jedi-related stories like an episode like this. But it would be nice if scenes like this are kind of used in a flashback where somebody does say, like, no, I can sense that you are somewhat in tune with the Force, and, but not enough to become a Jedi, but maybe enough to, get him out of a clutch scene or something like that. So it doesn't feel like they just Deus Ex Machina him out of a scene or something. I don't know. Who knows? Keith says Finn was Force sensitive. I believe that. I believe they alluded to that enough in the films and didn't pay it off, especially in 9. They heavily kind of talked about Finn talking about the Force and all this other stuff, but that's a whole nother discussion. Oh.
We gotta stop talking about 9, man. It's bringing the whole thing down too much.
It is. But speaking of awesome things, we finally get this awesome reveal where Ahsoka has the magistrate at Saber Point and says, "Where is Grand Admiral Thrawn?" And everybody's head explodes, right? This was
dun dun dun.
Yes. And so this is an interesting kind of a point to talk about. I already mentioned Thrawn, so I mean, you guys are watching, you've probably already seen this. But since the 7th Fleet was on the HK's heads, she's working for Thrawn. They talked about her backstory. She used to build fleets, and apparently she's still in business. It kind of explains maybe why the surrounding area is all in ruin. Maybe she's been mining the place into oblivion, exploiting all the natural resources, providing raw materials to produce more ships, all of that seems to make sense, especially now that Thrawn has been name dropped as, being a player in somehow in the Outer Rim galactic conflict. This is huge. I mean, I'm blown away. So I don't think. Do you think we're going to see Thrawn in The Mandalorian season 2?
Well, here's the thing. Do you mind if I reveal spoilers for Solo? While having this chat, by the way.
Solo is so far out. Yeah. Let's talk about Solo. Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's the reveal at the end of Solo with Maul. Mm-hmm. Now they didn't use the franchise of Solo, if you can call it a franchise. It's one film by itself, but they basically did that possibly with the intentions of doing it in later extracurricular Star Wars films, whether or not they were going to do like an Obi-Wan film, or whether they'll do that with the Obi-Wan series or whatever, that kind of thing.
Right.
So I'm wondering if they're doing the same thing here with Thrawn. It's like, is Dave Filoni going to make... Now, I just jog my memory here. Was he going to make a sequel series to Rebels?
So that's
after Return.
That is one of the main rumors, that whether or not it's going to be called a Rebels sequel, or if it's going to be Ahsoka and Sabine kind of tackle the universe or something like that. But yes, there is supposed to be a follow-up to the Rebels storyline involving Ahsoka and Sabine in the search for Ezra.
I love that name, by the way. Ahsoka and Sabine versus the universe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Kind of like back-to-back, lightsaber and dark saber or something. Well, actually,
I was
Sabine...
thinking more like a Bill and Ted kind of vibe, but yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Air guitars, I like it.
Yeah, that's it. That's
would
it.
Be...
Sorry, I was going to say, it could easily be a separate property. That's what I'm thinking here.
Yeah, I think this definitely... As much as I want to see a live-action Grand Admiral Thrawn is probably my favorite Star Wars character, period. Like, I am absolutely in love with him. I love the Timothy Zahn books, and we're going to get into my criticism. So earlier I said I had one big kind of criticism of continuity and stuff, and it's coming into this. So I'm a big fan of Thrawn. I'm a big fan of books, but I will say that a lot of the Star Wars books are not very good. And that's me being kind. But the exception to that, or there's a few exceptions, because there are a couple of gems that really stand out. But by and large, the Timothy Zahn books are completely exception from that. They're fantastic, and I enjoy all of the Timothy Zahn books. And he's doing more and more Thrawn books, but they're all backstory right now. He's got 2 more in this newest trilogy. That's a whole prequel trilogy for Thrawn before the Empire, and I love it. But Timothy Zahn came out with something on Twitter today, and I was just as surprised as you are. I had no idea where he's going, and I'm like, how can...
really?
Yeah. How can Timothy Zahn be writing a fantastic trilogy if he has no idea where it's going, right? And this is the problem with the Lucasfilm Story Group, and this is something Eckhart's Ladder brought this up. So he tweeted about it today, and I agree with him completely. It's really frustrating to take a genius level writer like Timothy Zahn and box him into a corner and say, we want you to write first off, he's written basically 2 trilogies. The first one was Thrawn, then he wrote 2 more standalone Thrawn books, but they didn't even tell him they were going to let him do a trilogy until the next book happened, and then the next book happened. So he didn't even know to kind of set up things for the next one. And this one is finally a trilogy, but it's even before the other ones. So he said that basically only Dave Filoni knows where Thrawn is right now and what's going on with Thrawn. And I'm like, why would you do that to the one guy who created Thrawn and writes Thrawn best?
Agreed.
It's frustrating. And it makes me afraid, because I've come to love Timothy Zahn's Thrawn so much that I'm afraid that if Dave Filoni doesn't involve Zahn and just makes his own version of Thrawn, I may not love that as much. One of the big differences is the Rebels version of Thrawn was more of a villain, and the Timothy Zahn version of Thrawn is more of the person you understand, so he's almost more of the anti-hero, because he's got good motives behind his sinister, sometimes, actions. And so I want the good motives behind Thrawn, even if, hiring this woman, he needed a fleet. Even if she was going to, maybe torture a village to get him a fleet, he needed the fleet because the threat was so much bigger. That's kind of the idea I want for Thrawn. But I'm afraid that you know, I'm afraid that Dave Filoni might turn Thrawn into a mustache twirling villain, you know, which I really don't want him to be.
Yeah, and look, it's okay if Dave wants to take his own direction, but I think like what really struck me about what you just said was they haven't even consulted. I'm like, that's
Now
they used to be so much better at this. They used to actually do this kind of stuff all the time. So I don't know what's going on here.
Well, one of the problems is just the way Star Wars has always been, and it's always been frustrating, is that their stories are not sequential. Everything that comes out for Star Wars is like, you know, polka dotted all over the timeline. Like this story is in between these two, and then the one that comes after that's before that, but in between these two. And I'm like, how, you know, you give the story group this like impossible task of just making everything fit when it's, you know, you took numbers from 1 to 100, threw them up in the air, and the first one that lands is the first story you write, and everything has to fit perfectly. This is why they had to get rid of Legends to begin with, you know, and make EU into Legends. They're going to end up having to do it again at some point if they're not careful, and that's what worries me.
Oh yeah, I guess so.
So anyway, but there's always the chance that Timothy Zahn was deliberately withholding information or something like that, because maybe there's really big surprises for us. But I agree with you that I think that this is more of setting up a future series. I don't know if we'll see Thrawn, but honestly, there is that chance. There is that chance we could, because you know, they then we don't get an answer. Actually, we don't know what happens.
No.
All we don't know if she kills the magistrate. We don't know if the magistrate gives her information. We assume she does, but whether or not it's even true or whatever, we don't know. Which I thought was interesting. What do you think she did there?
No idea. No idea.
Okay.
That's the whole thing. Like, I think she gave us her information. They popped her in one of the cages, and that's that kind of thing.
Oh.
But I think if they deliberately left it out, again, going on this theory like that they're going to have a separate series. And they could go on and on about it in this episode, but if it's not going to inform The Mandalorian, then don't waste time doing it. Like, focus on this show.
Yes.
Do the name drop and move on, basically.
Oh, that's a pretty good that's a good idea, and it's a really good setup for another series. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, on the day that we get the final episode, like the next day the trailer for the next, or at least a teaser trailer for the next series drops. Like we get a logo of like, you know, twin sisters or something. Well, it wouldn't be twin sisters. You know,
what if we get a live action Rebels sequel?
Yeah, oh no, I mean you've got your Ahsoka. All you need is a Sabine right now to get started.
Yeah,
and you know what? Another thing that's cool. Sabine still has Ezra's lightsaber.
Good point.
She's got his green lightsaber, so, and she knows how to use it. I mean, she's not a Jedi, but she knows it. You know, she's got the martial skill to be able to swing it. So, yeah, that could be. You could do a lot of cool stuff with that.
For sure.
I would love.
And we've got Bo-Katan already, and all them. So,
and Bo-Katan is obviously like. I think Bo-Katan is also part of you know playing the greater story forward. Although she fits more into Mando, but she fits into both universes very, very well. So, exciting.
For sure.
All right, so he ends up leaving. She's like, all right, I'm gonna go get the kid ready. She gives him the spear, and she's like, well, it's yours now. And he's like, I didn't earn it. She's like, no, it's yours. It belongs with you. So he's got a weapon. I think we're gonna see this spear in battle against the Darksaber. I think that's one of the bigger takeaways. What I thought. Yes, yes. I can't wait. It'll be interesting to see if Mando fights it, if he ends up with the Darksaber. I think this is stuff we'll see. We'll get to maybe closer to the end, the final episode. But wouldn't it be cool if he ends up wielding it and Bo-Katan wants to fight him for it now?
I don't like the idea of Mando trying to become the ruler of Mandalore, but I like the idea of him being involved. That's what I would say about that.
I don't know if... I think if he tried to keep it, it wouldn't be for him to rule Mandalore. It might be just to say there should be no ruler, or something like it shouldn't be you, sure. Like it should, this shouldn't belong to any one person. It should be buried, and he tries to take it away. And who knows? There'd have to be a good reason, because I think he's more or less friendly with Bo-Katan right now, so I don't think that would happen. But it'd be interesting. I think she's still got to convince him. There's always the conflict
because she takes off the armor, he doesn't, and all those kind of little things. So who knows?
Yeah, she's kind of a different religion than he is. So he's just like, I don't know if I want to trust you to take over my religion because you're this. It's going to be interesting. I don't know how they're going to play it out. So it might not even come to a resolution this season. We may they may stretch this out for a little bit longer.
I don't think it will. Based on the pacing we've seen so far, I think we're at least going to have Series 3 is going to be like teased very much. I don't think we're going to have much resolution at the end of the season, the way things are going.
I think we'll get a fight. I don't know if we'll see. Yeah, I would imagine that Gideon perhaps escapes with the Darksaber, or at least escapes with his life. Maybe maybe the Darksaber, like dropping it at a crucial moment, is what allows him to escape, or something like that. But I think we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I agree.
And then, of course, Mayor Wing now puts his he gets the tassels back on. He puts the robe on. He's now back, and this was just a great scene. Big shout out to the music that plays during this entire end sequence. It's very upbeat. It's very happy-go-lucky. It's very like mission accomplished, and I love it. I love the look that he gives Ahsoka, and they're like, "Hey, let's go celebrate!" And this is all just beautifully well shot right here, and the music continues even as Mando goes back and has to wake up.
Oh, that shot there, I love that so much.
This one almost made me tear up because he's like having to say goodbye. He's like, "Wake up, buddy! It's time to say goodbye." And he doesn't like immediately take him. He's spending some extra time. It's like, let's just hold each other for a little bit. Let me just rock you one last time. And like, I felt it. But the happy music is still playing, but now it feels ironic. It's like, it's happy for everybody else, but not happy for me because I have to say goodbye to you. This whole scene was very emotional. That
was rough, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, Ahsoka won't take him. She's like, you're like a father to him. I can't train him. And he's like, you promised, but he doesn't really fight her too much on it because I think he loves the child and in his own way. And he's like, you mean I got to keep him for a little bit longer? Oh, twist my arm, why don't you?
Oh, well. Plus, she gives him a new mission in terms of, like, what was it? He has to take him to this mountain.
Tython. It's a Tython.
He will decide his destiny.
Yeah, there's like the place at the planet Tython. There's a Jedi temple there, and bring him to like the apex, and there's to the summit, and he can place him on the top, and he'll be able to choose his own destiny. This was obviously where the next episode or two is going, and this is going to be something This is going to be something huge.
Could be the big finale. I mean, who knows?
I don't know if this is. Here's what I think. Oh, I'll get to what I think. I think he's gonna get there next episode, because they talk about like when you place him there, he'll reach out through the Force, and perhaps another Jedi will come for him. Now, I don't think we'll see that happen in the same episode. I think he'll reach out through the Force, and some kind of crazy stuff will happen. There'll probably be some monsters for him to fight on Tython or something like that. It might even feel like a filler episode while he gets to climbs the mountain or whatever it is. But I think there's a chance that Baby Yoda will choose the dark side. He's seen a lot of combat. Like he may choose in the middle. Like we don't like. I think whatever happens when he places on there is going to be very weird. It may even involve some special effects, like kind of trying to showcase a Force vision from Grogu's perspective. But I expect something weird to happen there. But then I think there's going to be a time jump before some other Force user shows up. So I think people are talking about like they expect it to be Luke Skywalker. I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah. That's a little bit too fan servicey, and that also brings all this back to the Skywalker saga, which they definitely don't want to do. But
no.
But for purposes of like what I think would happen, let's just say it was Luke Skywalker. I don't think you'd see him show up in that episode. I think you'd wait for Luke to show up like at the finale. Like, I felt this child. Like, if you needed somebody to kind of show up and be like the nuclear option when all hope was lost, like that's when he would show up. But I don't think it'll be Luke. I think I think there's a chance it could be an all new character, which would be a great opportunity to introduce an all new Jedi that you don't know anything about, that you have the opportunity now to go into next season learning about, whether they're good or bad or somewhere in between. I think that'd be a kind of a cool one. I don't know.
Yeah. But I hesitate to say Ezra, but I guess that is a possibility as well.
It really is with everything they've shown us, especially since we know that Thrawn is name dropped. Ezra's out there. Ezra certainly could. But I feel like that would be a little too close to what they want to do with a future, Rebels spinoff.
Yeah. It's hard to say.
I'm gonna throw this one at you. Jedi Fallen Order. You've got Cal Kestis out there, right? He is a Jedi, and he is, he'd be an older. Now the actor who played it, they probably have to get a different actor because the actor's still kind of young, and he'd be at least 20 years older. Well, ish by this time. So
I think we've got to be cautious with the kind of IPs they put into this, because up to this point, even with Ahsoka, even with Bo-Katan, it's accessible enough if you haven't seen those old cartoons. Like I'm picturing my parents watching this, and they could watch this stuff and they go, oh yeah, that's another Mandalorian, that's another Jedi, whatever. It gets to a point though where you have required reading, and I think the best thing about this show is it has no required reading.
Right.
That's what I think they should try to avoid. If they do Cal Kestis, sure, just be really careful.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've heard some rumors that Dathomir is going to be mentioned again, and that may have something to do with the magistrates being presumably a survivor of Dathomir. There may be some backstory there. But I will say in Fallen Order, I know that was one of the planets that you visited, and Cal Kestis travels with another witch from Dathomir and stuff. So it could fit in, maybe. There could be a connection to the magistrate. There could be some kind of link, and it could serve some purpose for the story if it's related to that. But I think they've done a good job in being able to introduce characters without you knowing much about them. For example. Yes. Somebody who's never watched other Star Wars before this was their first time, being introduced to Ahsoka Tano. And you learned a lot of what you needed to know just from watching this episode. That she's badass, and she knows things, and she's been places. She's very, very strong. She's, top tier, super ninja Jedi. And
you get the Cliff Notes, and that's all you need.
And you learned a little bit about Grand Admiral Thrawn, just enough to whet your appetite. That he's a pretty big deal, and he's apparently pretty mysterious, and a pretty major player. And that's all you really need to know, at least for right now. They've got to do something more with him though, because somebody who's never heard anything before, they've got to you mentioned this huge dude. What's going on with that? You've got to have payoffs for these things.
For sure.
And that's kind of where the episode leaves off. She kind of smiles and does another one of her classic Ahsoka looks, with kind of that smirk as the Razor Crest flies away, and that's where the episode leaves us. We've got 3 episodes left. I'm not sure how they're going to go, because everything that we've seen already has in the trailer has already happened in the first 4 episodes, so we really have no idea what to expect. I'm hoping we get a big space battle. That's one thing I'm definitely hoping for. Especially as an XWing player, you probably wouldn't be heartbroken to get some good space combat.
Yeah, they've done a bit so far. They've had a couple of X-wings, a few TIE fighters fighting against the Razor Crest. That was pretty cool. But...
That was I was surprised how well. I think if they do so. If I didn't have you on last week, we originally were talking about that, and I had to do some scheduling conflicts. But that would have been a great one to talk about, with an X-Wing player, because we got to see some straight-up dogfighting. And I think if they do the TIE Outlander and X-Wing, it's got to be pretty lousy. It better not have a great dial, because, those guys did not maneuver particularly well. I almost feel like that's a ship that would be better suited to, a hybrid or a ground game that can kind of land and drop off, a troop or something like that.
Yeah, perhaps. Hey, look, Atomic Max Games might do something with X-Wing and go, hey, there's a ground variant or something. Yeah. People have been asking for that one for a while, actually, so who knows. Yeah. I was actually going to say, based on the fact that I may have been on last week, I was going to do this thing where I just start eating blue macaroons in the middle of the stream, but alas, it was the wrong stream.
I think you can always do that, though. All of the food, this season has been really big on food. And I feel like a lot of that is marketing. A lot of the stuff they put in here is to show up in merchandise, or to show up at the restaurants at Galaxy's Edge. So I think blue macaroons are definitely going to be a blue milk kind of thing. But
for sure, I love that it's just blue macaroons. There's no pretense. It's not it's a start. No, it's just eating blue macaroons. I'm sure it's meant to be something in Star Wars universe, but yeah, whatever.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm getting spams pretty well here. Wow, look at
this.
Yeah,
I see that. Yeah.
Yeah. What's going on here?
Huh. Okay. Good on them.
Yeah. Well, they're happening. Yeah. I'm getting a ton of it. Well, I guess that's a good time to end the stream. Well,
yeah. Why not?
Yeah. All right. Wow, it's happening more than I can even. How do they do this? Why would somebody want to do that? All right. Well, I think that's a good place to end the stream. And I'll talk to you later. I'm glad they waited until the end of the stream to start the crazy spam. So thank you guys. Yes. Thank you spammers for giving me extra clicks to do. I certainly didn't need to do that. I'll talk to you guys later. And Nick, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Guys, be sure to check out Harry and Nick. His channel has some excellent deep dives on X-Wing. If you want a deeper look into the latest releases for X-Wing, he's going to give you a lot more information than I could do. There's a link to his channel down below. And show him some love and toss your subscriptions his way. I want to thank you so much, and thank you guys also for watching, and we will see you soon. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you. See you later.